Well, yeah, 2 weeks. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's Thursday. Brian here, and of course, I'm joined with my co-host Daniel Payton.
Yep, it's me. I'm here. It's been
And
one heck of a week.
yes, and no, you're not seeing things. I'm here. I'm
Yeah,
sitting here. I'm here.
we're all here.
I'm
We
here.
are we are supposed to have a guest tonight, but he has been a little silent on me today, so I don't know where he is. Um, I've sent him all the info and the link and all that, so hopefully he'll be on. But you still have me and Brian, so life's good.
Not so bad. Not so bad.
So
Yeah.
I see Valerie and Ashley have already shown up.
Hello. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
And
It's
don't
been a
forget to
while.
like and share as you're watching this. Get out there, show people that you're watching it, and admit it to people, and put it on your pages. I mean, we're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. It looks like we're also live on. Is that Twitch? Yep, we're.
It's Twitch. Might as well, right?
The world knows we're here.
That's right. Yeah. Gamers too.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So
last week it just came about where we didn't have a guest, and unfortunately I was busy out my ears with stuff, which I'm going to talk about because it's been a crazy week for me.
mhm.
And and so it just turned out to be almost impossible to get a show in last week, so we didn't do one. But this week we're here.
We're here. We're here. We're here. Hello. Welcome to my sister Heather. Hello. Welcome. Don't forget, like Dan says, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, do whatever you need to do for the show. So there's my grandmother. Hello. Welcome.
And remember, we invite you to ask questions about anything, particularly writing and publishing related, even artwork. My field of expertise is creativity, so I do a lot of art. I do music. I do, of course, books and publishing, and I'm getting a little broader in all of the above. So if you have questions about that or comments you want to throw out there, um, I have a couple topics I can cover tonight while we're waiting for our guests to show. But first, Brian, you've got anything? Any new stuff over the last couple weeks of silence?
Well, too much. I myself have been busy with writing and narrating. I got 2 podcasts going at the same time now, 2 different stories that I'm reading. So that's been a challenge. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
That's part of my bucket of goals that I'm trying to get started on. Is I want to do that as well. Start reading on a story. I have to pick which one I really want to do, and then just do it. I have some friends who are helping me with some ideas on how to properly filter, because I have all the sound set up here, how to make it sound even better. So, but unfortunately, as I say, bucket of goals, because I have things going on. This past week, I say a week ago, last Wednesday, I have a regular meeting with the guy who runs the online game that I work for. And
Yeah.
at this meeting, we usually set up what events and things. And I'm like, okay, he says, oh, next month we're going to do this event. We need a story. So can you write this? Well, he's asked me to write for more than one game. So I'm expanding myself. But in that, this past week, he asked me to write a full story, not just before, which is little bits and pieces, but a full story for one game. And then we discovered we have a hole in time for another game, so we have to figure out what to fill it with. So he said, "Oh, right for this, that both those stories had to be written very quickly to get them ready to go." In the gaming industry, timing is everything. You can't slow down or your players stop playing. So I had 2 major writing projects handed to me. Right after I got off the phone with him, I got someone contacting me from a whole different area where they were doing an anthology. And I agreed months and months ago to be part of this anthology and write a Christmas Christmas speculative fiction book, or
Oh, yeah.
short story. Really, it's a short story novella size
Mm-hmm.
I'd forgotten about it. Totally forgot about it. And the due date for the publisher to get that in it is the end of this month. So, looks like our guest is trying to connect. So hopefully he'll be able to get on.
Also, he's not even late, so which is a good thing. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we're still gonna have a guest. Oh, that's fantastic. Um,
Okay. He's working on that. So we do have a guest. Yay. So
Yay.
to make matters interesting here, I wanted to get this all done because I hate being behind on anything for my writing, because when you get behind on that, it starts to back up hard on you.
Yeah.
And so I worked on it, and I finished all 3 writing projects over this past week. And added up, I decided to sit down and add them all up. Over the past week, I have written 34,000 words. That's a freaking lot of writing.
That is a lot of writing, yes.
I mean, National Novel Writing Month, they ask you to do 50,000 words in a whole month. I spent a week and did 34,000 words. So I have been writing like a madman. And I finished today. I finished the final project of that Christmas story for the rough draft. Now it's going to take time for all the editing and work on that, but I'm ahead. Oh, it looks like Travis will be here. Yay. So that was that project. And at the same time, one of my other fields that I do a lot of help with newer authors and other authors is cover art. And I had an author who was just struggling with cover art, and so I was helping her figure out what was going on with that. And let me tell you something, that's a very trying area of publishing, is figuring out how to make that cover art sell, look good. And she was facing the problem that her cover looked like literally a whole different genre than the book inside. And she's like, no one's buying, no one's reading. I'm like, but people, I literally took her cover and started asking people, what do you think this book is about? Just give me your initial impression of the genre. And they all said the exact same thing. And I'm like, that is completely not what's inside this book.
Yeah.
And
it's funny that you are mentioning this, because I actually am having the cover to my book being done by someone. And of course, when you write romance for the first time, everyone the cover came out kind of wrong.
And it's easy to do that. That's one. I mean,
it's not what was in the book, so I didn't want to keep the cover, because I didn't write any erotic scenes or anything like that. So when the guy's on the cover and he's got no shirt on, I can't have that. That's the main character, and it just doesn't work because he's never described that way. So it just wouldn't work. So I'm like, oh man, but it's a great cover. Thanks so much. Let's redo it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So now I have to wait like another 5 days for her to finish, but I get 5 revisions. So let's hope, because I'd like to keep using her for, she's got to do 3 more, hopefully. So, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Cover art is a beast. And I'm going to tell you right now that consistently, especially newer authors, you will always see your first cover, your first attempts, they don't quite work. And so, and something else is, I have a lot of new authors who I've talked to who will ask me the question of, well, the publisher is going to hire somebody to do this. I want the cover. I say, you are the author. Let the marketing department be your cover artist, because covers market books. And that was something I had to get through to her. And I've got through to so many people that the saying, don't judge a book by its cover, only applies to anything else but books. People judge books by their covers every day. And if you have a bad cover, you will have 0 sales. I see it all the time. And it will kill you. So it's hard, because especially new authors, they fall in love with this idea of a cover, and you have to, take an atom bomb to that idea, because they won't let go of it. Yeah.
So, as an inside joke between me and Dan, if you want sales, don't throw me on the cover of your book. Eventually, you will have to change it. I had to face facts, folks.
Yeah. He's been on the cover of a book. Technically, your character, the Brian character, is on the cover of Earth's Last Starship, but it's not on Earth's Last Starship. But it's the image of Captain Brian Shepard, of the story, which is a little different than the image of the real Brian Shepherd in the world. So
True. That is true. That is true.
for,
Yes.
for Winter Wizard, which was exactly you, has now been moved to the back cover of the book, but it's still
Back,
there.
yeah.
It's still there.
I'm still there. Just flip me around. But yeah, don't put people, on the cover.
So
It may not work. It worked for a while. People really did like that cover, though. People were just like, who did the cup? Daniel. No. Yes. He drew that. That's it.
as I've always said, I'm the cheapest artist I can afford. So
I had some people in that did not believe that. No, I did not sit in front of him to be drawn. I've never met him in person. So
nope.
I don't even know how he did it. He did it by picture. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually several pictures. Taking photo references. Okay. Well,
Right.
I am excited about our guest tonight. This is a first. Not this isn't the first in the two different fields that he's definitely specialized in, which are acting and in writing. We've had plenty of authors, we've had actors on here, but he crosses that border into both, which is really cool. So here he is. This is Mr. Travis Richey.
Well, greetings, fellas.
Hello. Glad to have you on here today.
Well, thanks for having me. I was not prepared for video, obviously.
I usually to give you all an idea of how I run this. Usually, I send the link ahead like 15 minutes or so, and I get you on to say hi. This is what we're doing. The last guy I had on here, he was realizing me on video, and he was like, "Oh, I need to be in a different room. I need to have this. Can you wait?" And I was like, "Don't worry. I wait like 15 minutes. We start the show. You're off, and you have time." So he ran, and while we're doing the show, we have a little video down here which shows us what we're doing. I'm seeing camera bouncing all over the place, and him grabbing stuff. I'm like, he'll be ready in a minute.
Yeah, I usually do. I have a Zoom camera that I use, which is my Canon. It's nice. It's got the nice lens on it, and and you don't see my messy room. But this will do. I just moved in here into this place a couple of months ago, and almost immediately after that, I got into a bike accident where I broke 2 ribs, and that was 6 weeks ago. So I'm just finishing healing from that, and starting to finally put stuff away. But anyway, interestingly, I was listening into your conversation, and I had the opposite problem with the cover for my book, which we'll talk about, I guess. But my book is kind of supposed to be a sexy book. It's not erotic, or it's not a romance novel, in the way, romance, capital R. But I did want a sexy cover because it's a gay love story, and I wanted 2 guys on the cover and the sketch that I got initially was 2 gentlemen standing shoulder to shoulder facing camera in full suits and ties. And I was like, that's not it.
Yeah, that wouldn't capture that. Yeah.
So anyway, people don't know who I am, so you can talk about.
Actually, I like to start with that. So why don't you introduce yourself to people who are listening in and find out more about you?
Oh my gosh! Well, I am Travis Richey. I was born a poor black child in Wisconsin. No, I'm kidding. That's the jerk, by the way. It's not my. Boy, that joke does not hold up now that I'm thinking about it. So I was a small town kid in Wisconsin, and I lived on a farm for a while. I've actually milked cows, but I moved out to LA to do my thing, and most notably, I was Inspector Spacetime on Community, which was a huge thrill for me because I'm a huge nerd. So I was a Doctor Who fan and a Community fan, and to be in the thing that melded those together was a real treat. And then the other big acting success I did was a recurring role on Pretty Little Liars, which is really cool because it was another show that lots of people watched. Although the Venn diagram of Pretty Little Liars fan and Community fans is fairly touching. And as far as my writing goes, I've been writing almost all my creative life. I wrote my first 2 spec scripts in high school, and they were 2 scripts for Star Trek Voyager, because Star Trek, notably, was the only show that accepted unsolicited scripts from authors, and that's how a lot of our biggest sci-fi like writers right now got their start doing that, like Renee Shavaria and Ira Stephen Bear and who did I'm just giving one of my favorites from Battlestar Galactica, Ron Moore. They all started by like just submitting. So anyway, I did that for Voyager. Looking back on those scripts now, they're horribly formatted, but pretty strong stories. And then when I came to LA, I got into sketch comedy, which was really my love. That's what got me into acting in the first place. Back in, like, I was 10 years old, and my mom pulled me into her bedroom to watch Church Lady on Saturday Night Live, and that'll date me a little bit. But from that day on, I took sketch. I watched SNL and brought those sketches in with me to school to entertain my friends. And then so when I came to LA, I got into the Acme Comedy Theater and learned improv and then sketch, some of the best sketch in town. Unfortunately, the theater didn't survive the pandemic, but I learned a lot. And so I started my own YouTube channel, started producing content there. This novel that we're going to talk about was an idea that I originally had in 2009. Was going to write it as a movie, and I kind of sat on it for many, many years until 2014, I think. I had a very bad year where my what all happened. My agent killed herself. My dog died. My boyfriend left on a 8.5 month cruise gig, and so I was kind of sitting at home alone, and I was like, well, maybe I should just write this book as a movie, or write this movie as a book. And then even if it's bad, at least, I mean, Twilight was awful and it still got made into a movie. So maybe that'll happen with my vampire book. And so another Star Trek writer friend of mine, Melinda Snodgrass, called me and I asked her, I don't know why we were talking, but she's like, come to my house and we'll break the plot. And I had no idea what that meant at the time. I went to her house and we basically sat down and did a complete outline of the story. So I left her house with a 3-act structure and all the scenes and all that. And then basically only pecked at it over the next several years. And when the pandemic hit, essentially, I didn't want to feel like I was wasting my time. And so NaNoWriMo 2020 rolled around and I had nothing to do. And I was like, I'm finally writing this book. And I did. And then when I finished it, Melinda referred me to her publisher and he liked it and wanted to publish the book. So as of last week, I'm a published author, which is amazing to me.
And the publisher?
The end. Prince of Cats Productions. Alexi Vandenberg is the head of that.
Yeah. I just contracted the book with him myself, so that's how I know nice. Alexi. I was gonna say, we like to bring up the publisher here, so Prince of Cats.
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting thing working with Alexi, because I've always been, especially in my YouTube space, I am the boss of everything. Like I wear all the hats, and so it's very interesting for me to work on such a big thing for me and then give it to someone else and like put it in their hands. And he's been great. The book looks amazing. And I've gotten lots of great pictures from people who ordered the paperback version, which is available. Hardcover, I'm guessing, is to come, but I don't exactly know when. But it's so, I was actually kind of blasé about the whole thing until I saw a picture of my book in print. And that was amazing to me.
It will change you. Yeah. I had to learn a long time ago, because I've been in publishing for 14 years now. And
wow.
When you start, when you very first start, you feel like A, you have to do everything, and B, you need to do everything. And so when you hand it off to them, you're like, so what do I do? Wait, we'll take care of it. What? No. What do I do? Write something else. So
that's that's true. I am working on another project. I'm already working on so I wrote the Inspector Spacetime thing, became a whole big thing, and so we did a web series based on that we couldn't call Inspector Spacetime once we had to produce it ourselves. So the web series was called Untitled Web Series about a space traveler who can also travel through time. And then when we decided to do that as a movie, I realized, well, I can't have everything be obviously it can't be all Untitled Web Series, but I wanted to connect everything because we also had like a radio show and a comic book tie-in and a video game tie-in. And so we came up with the Inspector Chronicles as the umbrella kind of name for all that. Anyway, we wrote an Inspector Chronicles movie that got a lot of buzz. We had a lot going for it, but it couldn't get financing, mostly because I don't know how to find investors. Like I had 2 investors come to us to like chip in. So we had something like $75,000 in the bank of our measly $250,000 budget, but then I didn't know how to find anyone else. So eventually had to give their money back. And so my next project is the novelization of the movie. Because now that I have a publisher, we can maybe put the book out, get some attention on that. Maybe the book will make some money. And then the movie will be based on existing IP, which seems to be all the rage right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, I actually started with my writing as a kid in school, writing Star Trek fan fiction. And I wanted to write, I wrote a script for DS9 back in the day. But I, at the time, was in 7th grade when I first wrote that script. And then I wrote my first story. I was in 9th grade. And I was, at the time I was looking on, this is not, I can't send this to them. It's not that good, but I will keep working on it. By the time I felt like I had reached where I would be willing to send it to them, they stopped doing that.
Oh,
they stopped it back in like 98, I think it was, that they closed the door on it. And honestly, and I talked to I can think of her name. She was a producer for DS9 at a Comic-Con. I asked, why'd you stop this? She said, well, the internet killed it. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Why? She said, well, before fan magazines talked about it, people could send it in, but then the internet showed up and people started talking about being, I sent this, that's my scene, that's this. And suddenly they're getting from 100 a month to 10,000 a month. There's no way they can keep up with it. Right. And I was like, thank you, internet. I work and work. Thank you so much. But when you said, I'm like, wow, that's where I started. Now, and the fun thing is the biggest Voyager fan, although I don't know, you might be, sitting here, is Brian.
Oh, really? No, I DS9 is my show. That's my favorite. But Voyager has a special place in my heart. Bob Picardo was in the Inspector Chronicles web series that we did, and so there's and I know I'm friends with Chase Masterson. Oh no, she's D69. I'm friends with Lisa Klink, who was a story editor on Voyager, and I just met Brian Fuller the other day, which was a complete random. Like I didn't know it was him because it was at Lisa's birthday party, and this guy comes in and his chat. We're all in the backyard because COVID stuff, and he's just chatting with me, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, well, what's your deal?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm a writer." I was like, "Great, what are you working on?" "I'm doing an adaptation of Christine, the Stephen King novel." I'm like, "That's awesome, good for you." If I had known who it was, I would have blown my top because he's one of my favorite creators. Anyway.
Nice.
So Brian is also working on his first book, and he haven't got it published yet, but he's working on his first book.
I heard your novel, your cover art issue dilemma that you were dealing with. It was too sexy.
Well, when you have 2 characters and, she asks for a description, and I said, okay. I said, one is 39, one's 40. Eric is the captain of the cruise liner, and you have Justin, who ultimately, falls in love with him, whatever. So Justin is a redhead. He's a curly redhead. And no, people, it is not me. People think it's me. It's not me. I don't have curly hair. And so I gave that description, and he's tall and, that athletic build and whatever with short black hair. Well, Justin was fine looking. He didn't have red hair, but he had glasses and dark curly hair, and he's standing very close to what is supposed to be Eric, captain of the ship, but he ain't got no shirt on. So we're that muscular, good looking guy that's on those romance novels. And I'm like, oh no, that's technically not what's in the book. Yeah, it probably would help sell, but I don't want to deceive anybody. So I told her, you're going to have to change it. I said, I need a guy in uniform. So,
well, and that can be its own special kind of sexy. So
right?
that's
I said,
fine.
the next, she's got 3 more books to do for me. There's 4 in the series. So the next one, absolutely, let's go for it, whatever. So, but this one here, it's my first one, so I got to be careful. My grandmother reads it, so I have to be careful.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to Jackie Chan probably about 10 years ago. No,
Of course you were.
yeah.
He's always talking to somebody.
It's a weird story how I met him. Actually, nothing to do with all my Comic-Con
Sure.
adventures. But he was talking to me, and he said he would never act in something that he'd be ashamed for his mother to see.
Mm.
And I took
That's
that
my rule
heart.
for the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, I took that to heart. I'm like, I'm never going to write a book that I'd be ashamed, and I mean ashamed, for my mother, my father to read. That doesn't mean it's going to be puritanical writing, but I'm not going to go too far. I'm not going to be ridiculous just for the sake of it. And then, shock value is not going to be there. I'll leave that to other authors. I'll write within boundaries of my own design. But
yeah, I'm wrestling with that a little bit myself, because the book is this book especially is called Decimus, the Vampire's Curse. It's a gay vampire love story, and it's got a lot of thriller stuff. It's a vampire story first and foremost, but it also happens to be between the 2 gay protagonists, and so there is realistic depictions of sexuality, both straight and gay. And it's the kind of book I would love reading, but it's not something I think my mom would enjoy reading, especially the sexualized parts. And in fact, she bought a copy, and she stopped reading after chapter 3, which is fine. But chapter 3 or chapter 2 is like the only real graphic stuff. The rest of it is much more subdued. And it's not super graphic. It's just whatever. My stepmother, however, and I don't think she'll watch this show or ever see it, but her review was that it was and I don't know exactly why, because we haven't talked, but her review that it was an affront to the LGBT community and a gift to the haters, which was a little awful to read on my public Facebook page. And I don't know what was her problem, but if it's just the sexual nature of it, that seems a little hypocritical, because so many, like when I read the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant as a kid, I was 12, 13 years old, and there's, in the first couple chapters, there's a rape scene, and but nobody has a problem with that book being 2 trilogies, or whatever. And the Stephen R. Donaldson, he does plenty of other stuff anyway. But yeah, the sexuality thing is a tough line to toe, I think, sometimes. But
I remember what Brandon Sanderson said, which was that when you get any kind of criticism for your writing, to split it into thirds. 1/3 of it is going to be intelligent, critical of the writing nature of something you really should take to heart and go, okay, you work on this.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1/3 of it will be good, understandable opinion that will help you guide how you work your stuff. And 1/3 of it is garbage you should ignore. Your job is to sift out which thirds you're listening to. And over the years, that's been a saving grace on bad criticism, and in bad criticism from people that you're sitting there thinking, "Why are you being mean to me?"
Yeah, it was a really surprising thing to hear from my stepmother of 30 years.
Huh.
But anyway, but I have that experience with criticism. I put myself on the internet for the better part of 15 years now, and so when you're on YouTube is the ultimate place for anonymous feedback. But
oh yes, don't I know it?
Yeah, I avoid reading the comment section on YouTube on videos. I don't care, because they're gonna get the gushy people. I just love you, to the people who are just absolute. I'm coming on here to be a total snot to this person because it's what I do for fun. I don't want to read that. I want to enjoy the video that someone made, not the comments some idiots wrote. So
there are exceptions. Most of the places that I watch on YouTube, like if you've got, are you guys familiar with Vlogbrothers? John and Hank Green. Hank, obviously, they're both writers now. But their channel is how I got into YouTube, and they have cultivated a community that is very erudite and thoughtful and kind, which I really like. And so generally in the comments, you'll get the gushing, almost never get mean, but sometimes get insightful. And people, it's a community, which is really cool. I mean, that's the thing I loved about YouTube in the first place. In the early, say, 4 years, 2008 through 2012, it was a social network. Like I developed friends from other countries just on YouTube. We would comment on each other's videos. They used to have that thing where you could do video comments, which was interesting. But I mean, people abused that too much, but which was, inevitable. But, I loved that about YouTube, and that kind of disappeared. I don't know. I mean, I do know, but it's too much to get into. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, there's been a number of sites where trolly people have just ruined it. I as an artist, I like to use online sites to post stuff, and I used to love
me too.
a place called DeviantArt.
I know DeviantArt.
It's nice, except now everything on DeviantArt that comes up on my page is some kind of X-rated garbage. And I'm like, why?
Oh.
I post superheroes and stuff. I do art for online games. I'm doing superheroes and nature pictures and stuff. And underneath it's like DeviantArt doesn't suggest this one. And it's like, oh look, no, that's X-rated. No, it's like I don't get it. I do not get that. I mean, I understand it's popular, but seriously, it's filled that. That's like it's ruined it for me. I don't like using it anymore.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, I think what ruined YouTube is, I mean, there is also the trash of humanity on there, but I think it was actually capitalism that ruined YouTube. Unfortunately, Google tried to wrestle in Google Plus, if you remember that. They were trying to compete with Facebook, and that didn't work. And then they were focusing all their like promotional energy on the big channels and big stars, and so the little people who built YouTube up got kind of pushed aside. So yeah, whatever. Such is life, eh? C'est la vie.
Yep. So I'm going to ask you a little about your acting before we get to work on the book.
Yes, please.
You said
I can, if you want to give me a second, I think I can fix what's going on with why I'm so dark. I'm just going to close my shutters real quick, and I think this will help. You can still hear me because I've got my AirPods in.
Heather says she just finished chapter 4 of Fear on the High Sea. Can't wait for chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
See, this is much better.
Oh, look, there he is.
Yeah, isn't that better?
Okay, it's a black boy from. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so
all right. Acting.
I have an acting background in local community theater. So anyways, no. Where did you
that first?
My lawyer was just for fun because I wanted to be an author since I was in 9th grade. So I followed that particular path. Actually, another name drop here. It was Harrison Ford who convinced me not to go into acting.
Of course, yeah.
Well, Harrison,
really?
Harrison's an old friend of mine. I've known him for years because he lived 3 miles down the road from where I was at, and it was down in Tennessee because that's where his Callista's family is from. It's literally right by where I spent 18 years. But we were talking one time about it at the Theater Guild, and I was like, I'm thinking about doing acting, but I love writing. And he just sat me down. He went through the litany of what it means to be a professional actor. And he's like, do you want to do this? Is this your passion? And I was like, I want that kind of passion for writing. And he goes, then don't focus on the acting as your passion because you can't do both. One will suffer for the other. And that really set me back. I was like, I love acting for the fun of it. I just like being on stage. I like performing, but it literally was just for fun. Writing was a passion. So the
good thing about acting, you can always act as a hobby. That's something you can definitely do. And I always tell people too, like if you up and comers who are talking about being actors, I would say, like, if you can imagine yourself doing any other thing with your life and being happy, do that thing. Because acting is the worst choice. But I I was acting and performing at a young age, for as long as I can remember. Everything from doing like the church recital play or whatever to and then of course, you know, when Saturday Night Live, I was able to watch that. I started about 10 years old, and in middle school I really started becoming using comedy as a defense mechanism. I was born with this side, Bell's palsy. This, my finger's backwards. But wait, no, this is my bad side. Looking in the, it's weird looking in the mirrors backwards. So this half of my face has been partially paralyzed since I was born, and so it was a constant source of teasing as a child. So, but I ended up using comedy as a defense mechanism, and so that's how I became kind of a performer. And because if I could make people laugh with me, they weren't laughing at me, which was really sad. That's pathos for you right there. I am working on a screenplay about this whole thing, but I was 14 when I went to high school, and my freshman year we had a new theater director come in, who was from another town. So she came in and she didn't have any favorites at our school, and it was a big school of like 2,000 kids. Mm-hmm. So the fall musical that she did, usually at that school they always did Guys and Dolls and Oklahoma and Rodgers and Hammerstein bullshit. But she came in and did Godspell, which is progressive to say the least. And and the other thing, Godspell has a cast of 10 people, and here we are in a school of a couple thousand, and usually in schools, directors will split the roles up, so there'll be 20 roles, and then they'll also have a chorus. She didn't do that, so there were only 10 roles to be had, and I landed one of them, and I remember the feeling so strongly over the course of that rehearsal and performances and all that. That's when I realized that acting is or at least entertaining is what I had to do with my life. And so, unfortunately, I was a small town kid from Wisconsin and had no idea how to become a professional actor. And so it took me a long time. I went to school at the University of Minnesota, which had an acting program, but no film and television program, which I knew was what I wanted to do. And it took me years until I was about 25 to get myself out to LA and start working on it here. And even then, I had no idea how to go about doing it. I hit the ground running. Well, no, I didn't. I hit the ground crawling and had to learn how to walk and then run in this industry. And I was always someone who wanted to make things. Like I made a couple of short films while I was at the UW University of Minnesota. And they taught me a ton about filmmaking, even though they were awful, right? I mean, I wouldn't force anybody to watch them, but I learned a lot. And so when I got to LA, and when something like YouTube came along, and I saw that you could produce something and broadcast it to the world, and this is after I had done a short film here in LA and went on the festival circuit, which was awful because you go into a festival theater and maybe there's a dozen people in the theater watching your movie, and you do that 5 different festivals and several hundred people have seen your movie. But you put something on YouTube and you build an audience and suddenly it's thousands. And I'm not huge on YouTube, but at least 4 million people have seen my stuff on YouTube. And that's crazy. So I learned what I could, and eventually stumbled into. I got an agent from being at Acme Comedy, because agents love people who do improv. That's a huge skill to have. And although having an agent was not the end all be all that I expected it to be, when you're young, when you don't have an agent and you're not in the union and you haven't had an audition, you expect each one of those things to be like the thing that's going to break you into the industry. And none of them are. You constantly have to work, and you constantly have to manage the business of being an actor, which I think is the hugest failing of our theater education system, is that they don't tell you that at least half of being an actor is running a business. You have to be the marketing department. You have to be the, you know, the PR and whatever, all that. So, I did casting workshops, which are basically a way to network with casting directors. And they get to see new talent that they wouldn't otherwise have seen. You get to meet them. And that's how I met Josh Einson, who was the casting director for Community. I'd already done a couple other smaller shows, but I was a real fan of Community. So when he called me in, I was really thrilled. And so I landed Inspector Spacetime, and that was kind of the first big thing that I got that led me into a whole other universe. So yeah, without that, this book wouldn't have happened eventually.
Yeah, and what you described there is not a far from being an author either. People think that being an author is getting that big book deal and then sitting back and watching money roll in. That's not, and I honestly blame television and movies for that, because I get so annoyed when I'm watching TV shows, older ones, newer ones, and they show these authors who they literally spend 90% of their time on adventures, doing fun stuff, and they also go do book signings and have billions of fans all reading their stuff. Their new book just came out, and I'm like, you just did 5 seasons of all this crap, and how'd you get a new book? Where did you have time to write this thing? Seriously.
True. Hey, Jessica Fletcher wrote a book every episode. So she was, and they show her in the credits. She's typing away on her typewriter, on her Selectric, whatever it was.
Yep.
But yeah, like I was just reading On Writing from Stephen King last year, and his story is, I mean, he worked a long time, but it's funny because Carrie was a pretty big success right out the gate, and so it as a story, it's a nice thing to hear, but you're right, that's not how it happens. The other thing that's interesting about being a creative in general is that there is no path, right? Like if you want to be a doctor, there's this, generally most people take the same path, right? But there are as many ways to become a successful writer or actor as there are successful writers and actors. Like everyone takes a different path. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, there is, if you go to school to become a doctor, an architect, anything like that, you're going to get handed a diploma, and on that diploma is the word success, meaning you have succeeded to the point that now you can take what you're doing and move into a career.
Yeah,
there is nobody handing out a piece of paper to a creative person, art, music, acting, writing, that says success on it. There isn't. You're not going to get that handed to you. Oh, now I know I'm done.
And what's more, a diploma does nothing.
Oh, especially in the creative world. Oh, I work a lot in art, and one of the artists I love, Drew Baker, he will tell you every day, don't go to art school. He did, and he's like, he and all the other artists I know who are very big and doing big work for Marvel and doing big work for Dungeons and Dragons, stuff like that. All of them except for him did not go to art school. And they all have the exact same level of success that they're at right now. And he's like, I got a handed diploma, and basically it was, here, didn't you have fun? That's about all I got.
The best thing that schools will do for you is connections, if they do that for you. And sometimes they will. Sometimes they'll set you up with meeting people and making those kind of networking connections that not doing it won't give you. But as far as, I mean, yeah, you're better off making a short film or just writing your first novel or whatever and learning from that. As long as you can accept the probability that the first thing you do isn't going to be great, then you're going to learn something.
I tell that to people all the time when they come to book signings, and they're like, I want to get started as an author. What do I do to do this, do that? And I'm like, none of it. Sit down and write. The question I'll ask is, have you finished your book? Well, I've got notes and it's all up here. And I'm like, no. I don't want to hear that. Have you finished your book? No. Well, then don't ask about anything else right now. Go sit down and write. Butt in seat will get you where you're going faster than walking around asking people how to succeed.
Yeah. So there's another thing that I live by, and that's the credo, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So many people are waiting to do their project until they can do it just right. This is especially true for filmmakers, where they're like, I don't have the equipment to do it right and to do it. But that just do it. Just do it with what you have. Having to solve those problems of I don't have the budget to do it this way will actually help you be more creative and serve you in the future. And if you can do a good thing now, the next thing you do will be a little better, and the next thing will be better, and the next, and so on. And you'll never do perfect, but at least you'll have 5 good things in the time some people spend waiting to do that one perfect thing, which probably isn't even done itself. So,
in creativity, it's never perfect. And I love to show off my earliest drawings, my earliest manuscripts, my earliest poetry that I wrote decades ago, and have people go, "Oh, wow, that's what you wrote back then." I'm like, "Yes, but see where I am now. See what I did. I didn't do that by going, well, I had to wait till it was perfect. It's been 20 years. If I had waited till it was perfect in that 20 years, I would have been sitting and doing nothing. In these 20 years, I have 14 books out right now, and I got a lot more coming."
And the stuff that you do now is only as good as it is because you did that first thing back then. I leave all my YouTube videos up. Like, I have friends who delete or hide old stuff. I leave it up because it to me, it's a history. It's an archive of evolution of my work. So, and I really like that. And I don't have anything that I've ever done that I'm ashamed of. So, I mean, even those early ones in college, they're not like the first short film I did was a film called Footwear. It was about killer shoes. It was a horror movie parody. It's not as bad as it should be, you know? It's bad. It's very bad, but it should have been much worse. And so that's nice, you know, to look back at that and say, okay, well, it's not that bad.
Yeah. I as I said, I love showing people some of my early drawing, particularly because people see my artwork now that I'm paid to do it, and they're like, "Oh, I want to do it like that." And I'm like, "This is where I started." Oh, I don't want anybody to look at it and go, "Well, you're just so talented." Talent was 10% of it. Practice was the rest.
Yeah. I wish I could show you in coming up with the cover for my book, what I ended up calling a friend of mine. You might be aware of, his name's Christopher Jones. He was a comic book artist on. He did the Young Justice comic, and now he's working on the Young Justice cartoon and stuff like that. But he is a really great comic book artist. But also, he did the Inspector Spacetime comic book cover that we did kind of on a whim, and it's so amazing. So, when I got this original sketch that I didn't like, and I needed to send Alexi my kind of what I was thinking for the book, I called Chris and said, "Hey, could you just take 5 minutes and do the quickest sketch of 2 men facing each other, looking lovingly into each other's eyes, and one of them's a vampire?" And I sent I sketched on my phone. Somehow, I don't remember what app I was using, probably just the Notes app. And I sketched my stick figure art, whatever, basically, of what I would just the pose, and he translated that into just a cover that was so a piece of art that was so great in such a short amount of time that we were like, "Oh, would you like to do the actual cover, please?" And he said yes. So.
Yeah, I if I had a copy near me, I actually drew the very first cover for my Legacy of Dragonwan books, which was my debut book series. The cover was awful. It literally pegs every single no in cover art that new authors do. I did
Now I
it.
have to find it. What's it called?
Legacy of Dragonwan, and I think the cover art is actually still on the page on Amazon. If you look up the page, it has some art there, but there's a really horrible one with a dragon in the background and 3 characters up there. And I drew this. I drew it, and I was so proud of it.
Wait, I'm looking it up. Dragon what? I know this is horrible
Wand.
TV. Dragon Wand. Got it.
It's and it is
Daniel
not pretty.
Payton. No,
It's
that's
me.
book 5.
Yeah, you have to go back to book 1 and look under. There's usually like a little gallery of the pictures, and I think it's still on there.
I like book. I'm going to hold this up so I'm not looking too far away from the camera. But I like book 5. That's pretty cool. All right, so let me
Yeah.
close that and see if I'll.
I have a publisher now who does the covers for me. So the publisher does a great job. The covers are beautiful. I'm so glad he did, because that first cover, it was self-published. That's the thing, is I self-published my first book. And so again, as I always like to say, I'm the cheapest artist I could afford. So I slapped something together and was so darn proud of it. I use that as my cover, and it hurts. But I don't shy away and say, no, I don't want anybody to ever see this. I hold it up and go, this is the garbage I thought was great.
With the fire, is this it?
No, if it has, the basic one has the actual fire and the wand on the front. That's the basic. That's the. I don't know. Brian.
Yeah, these are pretty cool, actually. I like these.
Brian, you ask questions. I'll see if I can't find it.
Okay, you go look for one.
I really like the text on it too. I ended up doing the text on Decimus myself because I just wanted it to. I wanted it to look like a book cover, and so I made a point to just do it myself, just because I wanted, I don't know, that control. But I really liked it.
Why vampires?
Why vampires? Why not vampires?
Well, I know they're my favorite book, but I love those books.
I'm an equal opportunity nerd, so I really love all types of monsters. I love vampires. I love zombies. I've got a zombie TV show idea that I'm working on, and but vampires are just fascinating, and they've been so many different things throughout history, from even before Dracula. I mean, Bram Stoker kind of invented the modern vampire. Before that, it was very much a folkloric type being. And even since Dracula, vampires have changed so much. I mean, the Buffy vampire is a very different vampire than the Anne Rice vampire, which is very different from True Blood, which is very different from Twilight, which is... and they're all different. And my vampires are... the thing that I did to the world, which I really like, is I made them more realistic. So my vampires are essentially apex predators in human form. So they can't do anything supernatural. They can't fly. They can't turn into mist or anything like that. They have reflections, but anything from the mythology that could be explained scientifically, like a severe allergic reaction to sunlight, or garlic, or things like that. A stake through the heart will kill pretty much anything. Doesn't quite matter what kind of wood it is. Those kind of things. But what I did to the mythology, and I guess since the book is out, I can say it now. I played around with why vampires aren't everywhere. If a vampire can turn a human like that, and you don't have to wait for like a gestation period like humans do, how come vampires aren't everywhere? And so the reason is because 90% of the time, when a vampire tries to turn a human, drain the blood, give them vampire blood to drink, it doesn't work. And so 90% of the time they'll still die, and only 10% of the time does it actually work. And so that's where the Decimus comes in to my book. And I like the number 10 as a metaphor, as a kind of a grounding point, because it also relates to the classic ratio of homosexuality in society and that kind of thing. So it felt like a good dramatic thing for me to have an immortal fall in love with a human. But that old thing that happens in vampire movies where you're like, turn me so we can be together forever. You can't do that when the risk of killing your human love is 90%. And so imagine being a gay vampire where, vampires are rare, but then gay people are rare, and you multiply those together and you're a very rare, lonely person, and you fall in love with a human. What do you do? And that's where the drama comes from my story, which I'm really happy with. So, and of course, Alexia's first question was, can you make this a series? And I'm like, yes, I can. So
I can hear.
So we're working. Yeah, so I've got a really interesting 4-book series planned for this. So.
And something I have said for years when it comes to writing anything in the fantasy or science fiction, but particularly fantasy worlds, is don't be tied down to what is expected of fantasy races or fantasy tropes,
Mhm.
because then you're just writing somebody else's story. And I've had that happen. I've got books out. Dragon One's one of them, but also what's coming out from Prince of Cats, which is my owl-headed wand. I have my pixies are 6 feet tall.
Mm,
My elves are not the most powerful or the most ancient creatures in the land. They're actually more like the benders from the Last Airbender series. They're more elemental.
that's great.
I wanted to go through and use the known creatures and then make every one of them subtly or majorly different enough that they felt unique to my world, but still recognizable.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about with your vampires. That's very good because you're not just tapping the same story that somebody else has written, that somebody else has written, that somebody else has written. And it's like, people love the same thing over and over again. Don't get me wrong. Otherwise, sitcoms would have died 40 years ago. But
Hmm.
ultimately, readers do want something new to sink their teeth into, pun intended.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. My mom actually has a fantasy book, and it's about her love is unicorns. She's always loved
Mhm.
unicorns, but her unicorns are like 3 feet tall. Um, but you did stumble upon something that struck me just in your starting statement about fantasy and sci-fi. And what clicked in me is that my book is actually not fantasy.
Mm-mm.
I am a sci-fi lover. That's why I love Star Trek so much. And that's why my vampires are rooted in a
Science.
realistic depiction. And
Mhm.
so, and like even I'm thinking about the zombie book, and I'm like, oh my God, that's also rooted in like modern science. And it's just like the twist of it. So, yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. And also, I put it out there, but speaking of Melinda Snodgrass, are you guys familiar with the Wild Cards series?
Mhm.
It's amazing. Melinda co-writes it with George R. R. Martin, or co-edits it with George R. R. Martin, but it's a shared universe. Lots of different authors contribute, but it's more of a sci-fi take on superheroes. So they're caused by this alien virus that comes to Earth, and it's a great series. Um,
Yeah, I find honestly that when it comes to bending the tropes a bit, it's easier to do in fantasy or more to do in fantasy because fantasy is stuck. I know I love Tolkien, I love Sword of Shannara, I love these things that have been the bedrock of fantasy genre because they created what wasn't there.
yeah,
They took fantasy out of parables and little kiddie stories and turned it into something sweeping and vast. However, it's been done to death. But people are so used to that, have played Dungeons and Dragons for so many years that, oh, you're an ogre, you are this. I'm like, do I have to be? It's my story, it's my world. I can make it what I want to. They can be purple. I like picking flowers for all it matters to me. So I like that. But for science fiction, I don't think they're as tied to very specific roles and rules for their like the cyborgs or the robots or the aliens. There's a lot more freedom for the authors to just kind of do what they want to, and people don't judge them on it as
in
hard.
sci-fi, you think there is?
I don't think that the judgment from the readers is as critical against this is the trope of how cyborgs are supposed to be. As much as if I write a fairy and it's not exactly like everybody else's fairy, I'm going to hear about it. But
Interesting. I
if I
would
write
have said the opposite, actually.
I've
Uh,
I found it in my experience, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, just as a fan, from a fan point of view, I feel like if you're creating a new world, and as long as you if you're working within your rules of your world, I'm along for the ride. But with science fiction, there tends to be a lot more. To me, it has to also make sense within our universe, right?
Well, yeah,
And so,
I'm mhm. Looking at it that way. I was saying what I'm talking about is the specific, like as I was saying, the specific trope, the specific image. If I do, up through the '60s, if I said alien, people go, "Oh, little green men," and that was literally your box you put them in. When Star Trek first hit the air, and Gene Roddenberry pitched Star Trek to Desilu, and they said there was going to be an alien on the bridge. They were like, "Oh, that's interesting," and then he showed a picture of Spock.
fuck.
First question was, "Why isn't he green?" That literally was the first question. And he fought for weeks to do the pilot, the first pilot, The Cage, without painting Spot green. And the only way he got past them so he could actually film was he said, well, his blood's green.
He's got green blood.
That literally kept them from slapping makeup all over Leonard Nimoy and making him green. And when they finally filmed the second pilot, and the fans were like, "Well, this is pretty cool. That's an alien." The Desilu finally went, "Maybe he doesn't have to be green." And then Roddenberry introduced the Andorians to be solid blue, kind of as a poke in the eye, because he said, "We're not making him green." Of course, then they put the slave girl on there with all the, the Orion girl with all the green. So
sure,
there's the game. But it was like he literally did the blue alien just to poke him in the eye because they kept pestering him about making Spot green. And that, but we've moved past that, I think, to the point that you could say that's an alien, and I don't have to go, well, this is the mold he has to fit in. Aliens are literally what they want to be. Now, you are correct. You are correct about the fact that when you do science fiction, because I did my Earth's Last Starship, and I did not go into excruciating detail about how the science works. I did use real physics and theoretical physics for some of it. Some of it literally is just suspension of disbelief. And I've had people come to me and go, well, the way they travel in space, that's wrong. I'm like, it's fiction, people.
Yeah, I mean, in Dune, they use spice to create they use mind tunnels through space. So shut up.
Yeah. So
write your own book and tell me how they fly through space.
I credit Roddenberry, Herbert, and Lucas with throwing open the doors on science fiction and saying it is what we want to make it. Whereas fantasy has been kind of crammed in a box for a long time under the pressure of basically Tolkien, and then I would say Sword of Shannara is a big one that influenced a lot of people, but it was influenced by Tolkien. So, and D&D. These things have kind of crammed it into a box, and there are people who have a really hard time getting out of that box. But more today's readers are getting a lot better about not getting so pissy about it. So I'm happy about that, but I still hear it.
And I think it all boils down to you have to set up your own universe. You have to set the rules for your own universe and then follow those rules, which is the trap that too many authors and writers fall into, where they forget and it's easy to not remember the rules of your own universe. Like even my editor was like, you said this in this chapter, and then over here you said this. And I was like, oh, yes, I did. Thank you for catching that.
Writing a book like this, I don't know if you do this, but I keep usually a Bible, what I call a Bible of it. It's like what they do for a lot of TV shows, where you have here, this is what here, and so I have like the names. If they've met one person once, but they're going to get back to that city at some point. Okay, who was that bartender called again?
Yeah, I do that, and I have a notes app where I record every character that comes in. If there's a thing we learn about that character, I'll write that in. But it's not complete always. And I mentioned one character's relationship with his parents, and then 5 chapters later contradicted myself, but didn't realize it. And it's because I was, that character was kind of an amalgamation of 2 of my ex-boyfriends, and they have different relationships with their parents, and that's why. But that was the specific thing that my publisher caught that I remember, and which I was grateful for. But that I didn't put that in my notes, because what a dumb, it's a one-line thing, and why would I bother? But
that's what editors are really good for, though. I will say this: you can keep that strict, and you're right. Every writer will tell you, yeah, my editor caught where I said he had this in his hand, and 5 pages later he picks it up for the first time. Stuff like that. That happens to everybody. But I do have to keep those names, locations, time, all these little details. When I first started writing, I'll remember it all.
No, especially. Yeah, because especially the first 10,000 words of this book I wrote over the course of 5 years, I guess. And so it wasn't until fall of 2020 that I pounded out the last 60,000 words. And so yeah, it was. You forget a lot of what you set up, and you reread it every once in a while. But especially that last bit where you're trying to write, and I was doing NaNoWriMo, so I was trying to do 2,000 words a day, and just that's a lot. You don't go back and reread everything you wrote every time. So
I'm in fact that's something I advise against for authors is to what is called retro editing, and that's where you read and then I'm going to edit what I've done so far. And I'll read back. You will ultimately hurt your progress, and you won't.
Absolutely.
It doesn't do you a whole lot of good. You feel like it's
Yeah.
doing a lot of good. It really doesn't. So
Yeah.
I'm a little different. I've always been different. Since the ninth grade, I sit and write a book in 3 months or less. And I can't. If I start one, it will pester me until I finish it. And now I've progressed point. Like as I said at the beginning of the show, this past week I did 34,000 words just within about 5 days.
Wow,
But that's
impressive.
not normal. That's not normal for me.
Yeah,
but,
you and David Gerald, I think, are the only people I know who write that much. My problem is I do have my mind on so many different things. Like right after I wrote this book, I went back to school because it's just that thing that I'd never completed, and so now I've got school, and I don't know why I'm doing it. Honestly, I might quit again. But and I've also got this like movie and this like TV pilot that I want to do, and like this and that and the other thing. So it is a challenge to stay focused on one project.
I will, since I found it. Here's a copy of my first self-published version of this, and this was the cover art that I so proudly drew.
Oh wow!
I remember that. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Why does she keep messaging me?
That's colored pencil, and I literally physically cut and pasted this together. The background is a picture that's from public domain, whatever. Honestly, it's not horrible in its own, but as a cover, no.
Right. Yeah. I get what you're saying, and good on you for doing it and putting it out there and learning from it. Like, so many people wouldn't even do that. Like, that's the other thing. Like, I put for this book's NaNoWriMo project, I put together a group of 8 or 9 writers, people who had written before and wanted to write a novel. And this was in the middle of the pandemic. There were no vaccines. All you could do was stay home. And this is a perfect opportunity for all of us to write a book and help each other with it. I'm the only one who finished their book. And what that says to me is, if you can finish a book, you take that pride, man, because you are doing something that at least 75%, 80% of people won't even get that far. Like, I mean, for me to get out to LA, for example, just to get here, be a small town kid from Wisconsin, to get to LA was an achievement. And it's, so you have to be proud of those things at least.
Oh yes, and that's why I encourage writers, especially the new ones that come to me and want to know how to get started. I say, just write, because when you complete something, it makes it more real, that your dream is real, and you will do more. Keep doing more, and if you stop, you'll stagnate. You will stop yourself, and you'll find every reason to stop. Don't find those reasons. Just write. And it can be very hard. During the pandemic is when I first got my job working for this online game, and because my publishing went kind of weird at that time. All my publishers went home, of course, everybody did, and I couldn't make communications going. I had contracts that were just kind of sitting in limbo. So I was like, I'm working with the game. I wrote close to 300,000 words on a storyline for that game in 2020. We had to have a new story every single month, and I was writing as 12 part. Each part was 1,200 to 1,500 words, and then it was like 12 to 15 parts per month. And I was doing this every month, and I was writing more on top of that. And when I got done with the year, I thought, wow, this was a great story. It was very involved. The players loved it. And I looked back and went, holy crud, that's a ton of writing. I was so mad at myself in 2020 for not penning a book. And then I looked back and went, 300,000 words kind of counts.
Well, and that's the thing. Doesn't it make you realize that suddenly it's achievable? Like, once you actually do a big thing like that, you're like, oh, I can do a big thing like this. And like, for me, writing 70,000 words in a novel made the 18,000 words of a TV pilot seem very achievable. So I've whipped a couple of those out now.
Yeah, I never written a comic book before until last year, and after writing all this, I'm writing a comic book, and it's like, oh wow, that was not a lot of writing.
Yeah.
And now the comic book has been published. So
Oh, that's great! Congratulations.
thank you.
By the way, I'm just seeing that we have comments. That we have a comment section. I was in private chat this whole time, and it's just a blank thing. But
Oh, I forgot to tell you that. Yeah.
So hi everybody who's watching. If there's anybody still watching, John and Valerie and Heather.
Oh yeah, there's people still watching.
Now, Brian, you told me this week you were interested. I always send him the people that Lexi sends me as guests, and this time Brian said you had questions. You wanted to. Did you
I've asked my questions. I've asked him. Yeah. Oh no.
You did? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
If you can't tell during these interviews, it seems to be that I do a lot of the talking, and Brian sits there and just sees audience.
It's fine. It's fine.
Brian's setting is much cooler though, so
yeah, no.
His chair is nicer than either of ours.
Yeah. I just got my collection
the perks of working in I work for Staples, and I'm the operations supervisor, so I work 40 hours a week, and I unfortunately don't have a general manager at the present moment, so I'm running the things pretty much. So the perks of working at office.
That's nice. I've been in retail, man. That's a hard job. I hate
I've
it.
done it for 8-9 years. So yeah, it's terrible. But anyways, yeah, I get cool things and discounts on my chair.
I miss I was at Best Buy in college, and I really miss those days. And that was during like the computer boom of the, oh God, how old am I? Late 90s, I want to say. And when computers were just moving, everything was moving so fast. And I had like a giant L-shaped desk with 3 different computers on it. One of them that I built myself, and it was an interesting. I love that discount. And I bought my first digital video camera from Best Buy with that discount, a Sony something 900 TV 900. It was a digital videotape. That's what it was.
Well, to date myself, I worked many years in retail at Blockbuster.
Oh, I had a friend who worked at Blockbuster. In fact, one of my good friends now took a road trip from LA up to Oregon to go to the last Blockbuster.
One of these days, I'll make the pilgrimage.
It's interesting. And have you played the Blockbuster board game?
I have not. I've seen it. And my friends, the thing is most of my friends are 10 to 15 years younger than me. So when I say Blockbuster, yeah, I'm like, thanks. So I'm going to have to break that out and introduce them to it. But no, I actually spent 3 years as the top selling employee for the entire company. So
nice.
I need to make the pilgrimage up there.
That's great.
Days. Yeah.
I was the #1 salesperson in the #1 store in Best Buy back in the day. That was stores 007 actually. And I was, because computers were the big thing, it was very easy. I mean, it was someone in the computer department that was going to be the best salesperson. And it just happened to be me because I loved computers so much. So it was easy to sell. But I moved to LA with Sprint when I worked at a Sprint store. And I specifically went there because I kind of was done with Best Buy. But I went to Sprint because they had locations in LA. But I had to be in the company for a year before I could transfer to another store. So I had to put in my time. Was also very good at selling cell phones. I won contests and saw free concerts, and I won a couple Xboxes, the original Xbox at the time. So, yeah.
My brother he works for Verizon, so he's been in the cell phone industry now for 17 years. So I know all about it, and I am so glad I'm not in it.
Yeah,
it's lucrative, but
I was glad to get out of it. It was interesting. LA, I don't know where you guys are in the country, but LA, even working within the same company doing the same thing, LA is a game. Like, it's about who you know and all that stuff. And so I loved working for Sprint in Minnesota, where I was, and hated working for it when I got to LA. So I ended up getting recruited by Starbucks and went and became a Starbucks manager for a little while.
Yeah, I've
And
paid a few visits to LA. I've been there a couple times because I was part of a Japanese dance and music school, and our headquarters was for the United States was in Fountain Valley,
oh, sure,
and so
that's
we went
great.
out to LA to do big shows out there. So I've been there, but I live in Southeast Michigan near Detroit,
Oh,
and
okay, so another Midwesterner.
yeah,
Yes, nice.
I'm from Oklahoma originally.
Oh, I'm sorry. Congratulations on getting out. I hear horrible things about Oklahoma.
I survived all 8 tornadoes that I got attacked by. I don't want to go through those ever again. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's me in winter.
oh yes,
um,
winter up here is so much fun. But Brian,
but I love LA, guys. I mean, I don't want to belittle LA as a city. It's so much fun to live here, and it's funny because you mentioned your Japanese training. I ended up going to Japan for a job in 2020. I booked it at the end of 2019 and flew to Japan in February of 2020, just in time for the pandemic to hit. Um, and so the plan was to be out of LA for at least 5 years. I was going to be in Japan and then traveling the world for 5 years, and then the pandemic caused them to scale back and send a lot of people home before their contracts ended, and that's why I was in Nashville with nothing to do to write this book. So it all works out.
so you were in where?
So when I left Japan, since I'd given up everything in LA, I went to Nashville because I had a friend there who offered me a spare room that he had, and so I was
Oh,
staying just outside of Nashville for about 9 months.
where outside of it?
So Donaldson, do you know
Okay.
Donaldson?
So I lived in East Tennessee for 18 years.
Oh, I have friends in Knoxville. So
Yeah.
my best friend lives. My co-writer of the Inspector Chronicles and Robot Ninja and Gay Guy, which was my first web series, lives in Knoxville with his wife and kid.
Okay. Yeah, I live 40 minutes east of Knoxville in the mountains. So,
Oh, woo, way
so
east. Wow.
oh yeah, we were true deep East Tennessee.
Oh,
So, well, no, that side of the state, we got right side of Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Knoxville, near Bristol, that general area. So,
Nice,
I,
nice.
I end up in Nashville quite a bit too. It's nice. It's
I
nice.
mean, I didn't experience a whole lot of it, but I did love the neighborhood that I was in. It was the families. It was a very everybody had big yards, and lots of space, and so it was still in the middle of the pandemic, so we were all being very careful and social distancing. But we would talk outside, and the kids would play, and so it was a lot of fun. But
And then Brian's up in Massachusetts, and
oh, I've heard good things about Massachusetts. My aunt was the superintendent of schools in Athol, Massachusetts.
okay. Yep, I've been through there. So I am currently, takes me about 45 minutes to get to Albany.
Oh, neat. I've actually never been. I visited New York a couple times, but I've always wanted to see Boston. So much history there.
Yes, it's very nice too. But I'm about 3.5 hours from Boston, so I'm on the west. So, uh, yeah,
I didn't realize there was Massachusetts was big enough to be 3 hours away from anything.
yep. And from where I am,
Impressive.
it'll take me about 3.5 hours to get to New York City as well, depending on
Is it?
traffic.
I was gonna say, is that mostly because of traffic? Because I feel like I can get from one end of Wisconsin to the other in about 3 hours.
So the highway runs from technically where I am. I can catch it anywheres, and it runs straight down the middle of Massachusetts all the way to Boston.
Huh. All
So
right. This is fascinating, by the way. I'm sure. I'm sure our audience loves this.
yeah, well, most of them know they're
yeah, they
always
know us. We talk about our locales. When I
yes,
first met Brian, I was living in East Tennessee,
yeah,
and Tennessee's a fun state because it can take you 13 hours to go from west to east. It can take you an hour and a half to go from north to south.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Yep. Absolutely.
anyways, it is actually we're about 20 minutes past our normal end
Okay, I
time.
was gonna ask. I didn't know. Yeah, I figured.
It's been a great
Sorry.
show.
We
And
always run
hey,
over for
we
the
love
good one.
talking. We love
Um,
talking and meeting people. So,
all we need to know is where do people find this book?
It is currently on Amazon, only on Amazon. It is called Decimus, Decimus, The Vampire's Curse. And you can probably search for me on there too. Yeah. And I'm on Instagram too at the Travis Richey, and so from there you can see a link on my a link right in my bio.
Perfect.
We've
we're
shared
not
and we'll continue to share this and the books. And anything else? Big question. I know some people asked. I think they've asked this, but do you have any more acting work coming up soon?
So no, acting work tends. Oh well, I mean, there's a project that actually Melinda's working on that she has me pegged for, but it's currently looking for financing. But the other than the stuff that I do for myself, nothing on the horizon. So that's one of the reasons I'm writing. The Inspector Chronicles movie is something that I very much want to do, and it's I feel like there are fans still waiting for it. And so if I can do the book that will help make the movie happen, that's my big focus right now.
Yep.
I like the cover, by the way.
Thank you for Decimus. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. Like I said, that's Christopher Jones did the cover, and I'm very interesting. Well, yeah, thank you, Valerie and Amber and John, and you guys are awesome. Thanks for sticking around and watching.
Yep. Thank you for being here, and I'm so glad you were here today. We'll be glad to have you back on in the future if you want to join us and chat again. Talk
All
about
right, my pleasure, guys. This was fun. I'll be more prepared with everything. I'll look so much better.
Yeah, I should send more warnings to people that you're going to be live. So,
and I did look up the show, and I was like, because I looked for it on podcasts and it wasn't there, and I was like, oh, what is it then? And so I Googled it, and I just saw a video, and I kind of in the back of my head was like, oh, they also record video when they're doing the podcast, and that's not quite what this is. So
yeah,
that's all right. I'm adaptable.
This is recorded, so like everything on the internet, this is forever. People will be able to see this in the future. You can share it to your YouTube channel and all that. So more than happy. So
make sure you send me a link to it.
Yes, definitely. We'll share your work, and we're glad to have you on here. So everybody, thank you for being here. And Brian, you have anything else before we go?
Not really.
Not really?
All right.
Not really?
I'm good.
Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you having me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend.
You too. Thank you for being on here.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So, Brian, before we go, you do have something to say. Pitch your other broadcast.
Pitch my other podcast?
Your book reading.
Which one? I got two.
Well, then you can tell people about it.
Oh, before y'all go. So yeah. So every week, it's supposed to be every Thursday. So currently I'm writing Fear on the High Seas, which people are probably aware of. I've already released 4 chapters. So that is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, you name it, it's out there. And you can listen to me narrating it. And then the other one is Murder in Stratton County, which on Easter of all days, I got the permission from my friend Elizabeth Spoon, who I co-wrote with, to release that on podcast. So every week that is turned into a serialized book as well until, it's all finished and it'll go on to ebook and print and all that good stuff. So I'm having fun with it. I'm having fun. So much fun. So thank you. Yeah.
And hopefully very soon I will join him, and Brian will help me host that to have my own book reading podcast that we can put out there. And I'm trying to decide which book I want to do, if it's something that's been published or if it's one of my unpublished works that I'll introduce people to. Either way, I want to get started with that because it sounds like something fun. And I enjoyed this type of stuff, so we'll have fun with that. But for now, find Brian's and listen to that. You can listen to one of the great things is you can listen to it from the beginning. So you don't have to try and catch it in the middle and hope to figure it out. You can start the beginning and listen and catch yourself up. So that's
absolutely
that is fun. So anyways, anything else, Brian?
That is it.
So everybody, thank you for staying as long. We had a well overage on the show tonight, but it was fun. He was great to talk to. So
yes, he was.
Hope to see you next Thursday, and very soon here. I will pitch this very soon here in a couple weeks. I'm going to be at Motor City Comic Con in Novi, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, Comic Cons in Michigan, and one of the largest in the Midwest. They just announced a lot of their guests. They've got William Shatner as the big announcement for today, and they've got a whole bucket of other guests that are really great. Of course, one of their best and most important guests there is going to be me. So if you have books you want to have signed, or what you want to meet or find me there at Motor City Comic Con. And it's a great convention. I was there last year and had an absolute blast. And we were in the middle of all the restrictions last year, so it was withheld. This year it's supposed to be even bigger. So that's my next one there. And the end of the month, I will be in Knoxville, Tennessee, doing the Rocky Top Game Con in Knoxville. So you can find that one. That's a bit smaller if you're more for gamers, but come on out if you're there. So
did you say that you had July dates as well for things coming up, or you just weren't sure yet?
My July, I because everybody's weddings that got put off in the last 2 years are all happening this year. This year's the biggest wedding year in history, and I have 3 weddings happening in June and July, and one of which I'm an usher at, and so I'm not. It's not a Comic-Con thing. This is a wedding I'm going to be at, so I'm busy. And I am setting up new stuff, so I don't know when I have new things coming up. But right now, because it's so soon, if anything's happening in June and July, most likely I won't be at it Comic-Con wise, unless it's already set up. Like if I join the Bard's Tower, which is the Alexi, our publisher, he does this with authors, and he's already got them set up. I might be able to join those. But for now, my next 2 that are right up close is Motor City in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks after that will be Rocky Talk Games, where you can come out, meet me, get signed books, and say hi. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you all for being here, and everybody have a good night, good week, and we'll see you next Thursday.